May 27, 2024, deep inside Russia, more than 1,800 kilometers from the Ukrainian border, a silent predator descended from the night sky. This wasn't a stealth bomber, it wasn't a cruise missile launched from a warship. It was a drone built in Ukrainian workshops, guided by Ukrainian operators, carrying just enough explosive to change the calculus of modern warfare forever. The target, a Voronezh-DM early warning radar station near Orsk, one of the crown jewels of Russia's nuclear defense shield. A system designed to detect incoming ballistic missiles from thousands of miles away. A system that, according to Russian doctrine, helps prevent nuclear Armageddon, and Ukraine just took it offline. This is the story of how a country fighting for its survival turned consumer technology and battlefield innovation into a strategic weapon capable of striking the heart of a nuclear superpower. This is the story of drone warfare in the 21st century and why what happened at Orsk may have just rewritten the rules of modern conflict. Welcome to the age of asymmetric warfare, where a $15,000 drone can neutralize a $1 billion radar system. Let's dive in. To understand how we got here, we need to rewind to February 24th, 2022, the day Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine. The military analysts were almost unanimous. Ukraine won the last 3 weeks. Russia had 900,000 active troops. Ukraine had 25,000. Russia had thousands of tanks, hundreds of aircraft, and a Black Sea fleet that dominated Ukrainian waters. But what nobody predicted was that this war would become the first true drone conflict in military history, and that Ukraine, the underdog, would pioneer tactics that are now being studied in military academies around the world. In the early months of the war, Ukraine relied heavily on Turkish-made Bayraktar TB2 drones. These unmanned aerial vehicles became legendary, taking out Russian artillery, destroying supply convoys, even sinking the cruiser Moskva. But here's the problem: Turkey could only supply so many, and each Bayraktar cost millions of dollars. Ukraine needed something scalable, something cheap, something they could build themselves. Enter the era of commercial drone warfare. By late 2022, Ukrainian engineers, volunteers, and military intelligence began a remarkable transformation. They took commercial off-the-shelf drones, the kind you might use to film your vacation, and turned them into weapons of war. First-person view drones, or FPVs, became the infantry's best friend. These small quadcopters, costing just a few $100s each, could drop grenades on Russian trenches, hunt tanks, and even clear minefields. By 2024, Ukraine was producing over 50,000 FPV drones per month. But the real innovation came in long-range strike capabilities. Ukrainian engineers developed an entirely new class of drone, the kamikaze UAV, or one-way attack drone. These weren't designed to return home. They were designed to fly hundreds, sometimes thousands of kilometers, evade Russian air defenses, and deliver their warhead with surgical precision. Models like the UJ-22 Airborne, with an 800-kilometer range, the Beaver, capable of traveling 600 miles, and experimental designs that pushed ranges beyond 1,500 kilometers. All of this was happening in unmarked warehouses, small workshops, and even furniture factories where plywood fuselages were being milled alongside kitchen tables. Ukraine's strategy became clear. If Russian forces were too deep to reach with artillery or missiles, drones would bridge the gap. Oil refineries in Bashkortostan, ammunition depots in Bryansk, air bases in Irkutsk, 300 kilometers from the Ukrainian border, and then in May 2024, Ukraine crossed a line no one expected them to cross. They went after Russia's strategic nuclear early warning radars. May 22nd, 2020, the Armavir radar station in Russia's Krasnodar region, roughly 600 kilometers from Ukrainian-controlled territory. This wasn't just any radar. Armavir hosted 2 Voronezh-DM early warning radars. Each one cost hundreds of millions of dollars. Each one could track objects up to 6,000 kilometers away. And together, they formed a critical part of Russia's nuclear ballistic missile early warning system, the system that was supposed to give Moscow minutes of warning before an incoming nuclear strike. That morning, Ukrainian drones penetrated Russian airspace, flew hundreds of kilometers undetected, and struck both radar buildings. Satellite imagery confirmed catastrophic damage. Debris littered the site. One radar was completely offline. And for the first time in this war, Russia's strategic nuclear defense infrastructure had been compromised. Let's talk about what these radars actually do. The Voronezh-DM is an ultra-high frequency, over-the-horizon phased array radar. It's designed to detect ballistic missile launches from the Middle East, Mediterranean, and parts of Eastern Europe, essentially forming a southern early warning barrier for Russia. In theory, if NATO ever launched IBMs toward Moscow, Armavir would see them coming. It would give Russia Russia's command authority time to decide, do we launch a retaliatory strike before our missiles are destroyed on the ground? This is what deterrence looks like in the nuclear age, and Ukraine just punched a hole in it. The strike sent shockwaves through both Moscow and Washington. Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov warned of an asymmetrical response. Former Space Chief Dmitry Rogozin accused the United States of ordering the strike, even though there's no evidence the U.S. had advanced knowledge. But the concern in Washington was very real. An unnamed U.S. official told the Washington Post that damage to Russia's early warning radars could hurt strategic stability between Russia and the United States. Why? Because if Russia's leadership believes their nuclear deterrent is being blinded, it increases the risk of miscalculation. In a crisis, Moscow might conclude they're about to be attacked and launch first. But Ukraine wasn't finished. 4 days later, on May 26th, Ukrainian military intelligence executed an even more audacious operation. A single drone, likely a modified long-range kamikaze, took off from somewhere inside Ukrainian-controlled territory. It flew 100 kilometers across Russian airspace, navigating electronic warfare systems, dodging air defense batteries, and maintaining its course through the night. Its target, the Voronezh-DM radar station near Orsk in the southern Orenburg region, just 15 kilometers from the Kazakhstan border. This wasn't just a strike, it was a statement. Orsk is deeper into Russia than Kyiv is from London. It's further from the Ukrainian border than Paris is from Berlin. And yet, a Ukrainian drone built in a workshop, guided by military intelligence, reached it. This was the longest-range drone strike in military history. Here's where it gets interesting. Analysts debate whether Armavir or Orsk actually play a meaningful role in Russia's war against Ukraine. Nuclear weapons expert James Acton published detailed analysis showing that because of Earth's curvature and the radar's elevation, Armavir can only detect launches from a narrow sector covering parts of southern Ukraine, including Crimea, for everyday drones and aircraft. The radar is essentially useless. The Orsk radar faces east toward Kazakhstan, covering launch trajectories from the Middle East and western China. It has virtually no line of sight to Ukrainian airspace, so why strike them? Ukrainian intelligence sources told Reuters the radars monitor the actions of Ukrainian security and defense forces in the south of Ukraine. But most military analysts believe the real reason is psychological and strategic signaling. Ukraine was demonstrating capability, saying, "We can reach your most protected assets, nowhere is safe," and it was sending a message to Moscow, "Escalate this conflict, and we will make sure your nuclear early warning network, the system you rely on to keep NATO at bay, becomes a liability instead of a shield." But the story doesn't end in May 2024. Throughout the rest of 2024 and into 2025, Ukraine continued targeting Russian radar systems with relentless precision. August 7, 2024, Ukrainian drones launched from uncrewed surface vessels attacked radar stations on Mount Ipetri in Crimea, destroying Nebo-2 radars and components of the S-400 air defense system. September 9, 2024, 2 more radar stations in Crimea, a Podollet low-altitude radar, and an all-MM module from the Nebo-M complex were struck by Ukrainian drones. December 18, 2024, a coordinated drone strike on Belbek Air Base in Crimea damaged a 90-second 6-gravestone radar, the fire control system for 400 missiles, along with 2 more Nebo-2 surveillance radars. Each strike followed the same playbook: long-range kamikaze drones, often launched from unconventional platforms like drone boats, flying low to evade detection and striking with pinpoint accuracy. The Ukrainians weren't just attacking radars randomly. They were systematically dismantling Russia's integrated air defense network, blinding the systems that coordinate missile batteries and fighter intercepts. So what happened after Ukraine demonstrated it could strike strategic nuclear infrastructure 800 kilometers inside Russia? First, the obvious: Russia scrambled to reinforce its air defenses around critical sites. Voronezh radar stations now have layered Pantsir S-1 air defense systems deployed around them. Mobile jamming units have been positioned to create electronic warfare bubbles. But here's the problem: Russia is fighting a war on multiple fronts. It needs those air defense systems at the front lines in Ukraine, protecting advancing troops and logistics hubs. Every Pantsir S-1 defending a radar station in Siberia is one less system protecting Russian forces in Donetsk. Ukraine's drone campaign has forced Russia to disperse its forces and resources across vast distances. By one estimate, at least 10% of Russia's oil refining capacity was knocked offline by Ukrainian drone strikes at one point in 2020. Fuel depots, ammunition warehouses, and command headquarters have all been hit, forcing Russia to move these assets further from the front lines. This means longer supply chains, slower logistics, and higher operational costs for Russia's military. Every kilometer that Russian supply trucks have to travel because Ukraine destroyed a forward depot is a small victory for Kyiv. And those Those small victories add up, but Russia adapted. By late 2004, Russian forces were fielding their own long-range drone swarms, including decoy drones designed to overwhelm Ukrainian air defenses. Moscow claimed its Rubicon drone formation was executing strikes at ranges exceeding 2,000 kilometers beyond the front line. Russia also accelerated production of fiber-optic controlled drones, UAVs, connected to their operators via physical cable, making them immune to electronic jamming. These systems reportedly have ranges up to 50 kilometers. The drone war had become an innovation arms race. Meanwhile, Ukraine continued pushing the boundaries of what's possible with unmanned systems. In December 2024, Ukrainian forces conducted the first fully unmanned ground operation near Lipsy, north of Kharkiv. Dozens of uncrewed ground vehicles armed with machine guns and explosives advanced on Russian positions, supported by FPV drones providing air cover. No infantry involved. The attack successfully destroyed Russian fortifications and showcased a glimpse of future warfare, robots fighting robots. Ukrainian developers also integrated artificial intelligence into their drone systems. Eye-powered navigation allows drones to autonomously track targets and complete missions even under heavy electronic warfare. Vision-based positioning systems let drones navigate without GPS. These aren't science fiction concepts, they're being deployed on the battlefield right now. Here's where the economics of modern warfare get fascinating. A Ukrainian long-range kamikaze drone costs between $15,000 and $25,000 to produce, depending on the model. Some, like the plywood fuselage oxide, can be built for even less. Compare that to a caliber cruise missile. $6 to $5 million in ATACMS ballistic missile, 1 ounce of $7 million a Tomahawk cruise missile, $2 million Ukraine can produce hundreds of drones for the cost of a single cruise missile. And while cruise missiles might deliver a larger warhead, drones offer something more valuable: persistence and mass. You can launch 100 drones at a target. Even if Russian air defenses shoot down 90 of them, 10 get through. That's enough to cripple a radar station or an oil depot. This is the new map of asymmetric warfare. The implications of Ukraine's drone revolution extend far beyond the battlefields of Eastern Europe. Every military in the world is now reassessing its doctrine. How do you defend against swarms of cheap, expendable drones? Traditional air defense systems designed to shoot down aircraft and missiles are expensive to operate and can be overwhelmed by sheer numbers. How do you protect strategic infrastructure when your adversary can strike anywhere, anytime with relatively low-cost systems? And perhaps most importantly, in an age where a workshop can build weapons capable of reaching targets 2,000 kilometers away, how do you maintain strategic deterrence? Defense analysts warn that the technology Ukraine has pioneered is now in the wild. Terrorist organizations, insurgent groups, and rogue states are all watching closely. The components needed to build long-range kamikaze drones, GPS modules, flight controllers, small engines are all commercially available. Ukrainian manufacturers have proven it's possible to create a 700 and 500 kilometer range drone using plywood, furniture factory equipment, and off-the-shelf electronics. What happens when that knowledge spreads? One counterterrorism study published in 2025 warned that violent extremist organizations could adapt Ukrainian drone designs to conduct coordinated swarm attacks on critical infrastructure, government buildings, or public events. The genie is out of the bottle. But let's not lose sight of the human dimension of this story. Every Ukrainian drone operator knows they're fighting for their country's survival. Many are volunteers, engineers, hobbyists, even farmers who taught themselves to fly FPV drones and now spend their days hunting Russian tanks. The psychological toll is immense. Drone operators watch their strikes in real time through first-person cameras. They see the moment of impact. They see the aftermath. And yet, they continue because in their eyes, every Russian tank destroyed, every radar blinded, every logistics hub burned is one step closer to ending the war and liberating their homeland. Russia, for its part, has spun Ukraine's strikes on strategic radars as evidence of Western escalation. Kremlin officials claim the attacks prove NATO is trying to blind Russia's nuclear deterrent as preparation for a first strike. It's a narrative designed to justify further Russian aggression and rally domestic support. The truth is simpler. Ukraine is doing what any country would do when fighting a larger, better armed adversary. It's innovating, adapting, finding ways to hit back where its enemy is vulnerable, and in 2024 and 2025, that meant going after radars. So here we are, 3 years into a war that has redefined modern combat. The strikes on Armavir and Orsk weren't just tactical victories for Ukraine. They were a demonstration of a fundamental shift in how wars are fought in the 21st century. In previous conflicts, air superiority meant controlling the skies with fighter jets and bombers. Now, it means denying your enemy the ability to see and track aerial threats and doing it with drones that cost less than a new car. What are the lessons from Ukraine's drone warfare revolution? First, technology democratizes warfare. A smaller, less wealthy nation can now field weapons systems that threaten the strategic assets of a superpower, not through traditional arms purchases, but through ingenuity ingenuity and mass production. Second, scale matters more than sophistication. Ukraine produces millions of drones per year. Many are crude, many fail, but enough succeed to make a strategic difference. Third, speed of innovation trumps legacy systems. While Russia fields air defense networks designed in the Cold War, Ukraine iterates new drone designs every few months, testing them in combat, learning what works, and scaling production. And finally, the future of warfare is unmanned. The December 2024 operation at Lipsy, where robots fought robots with no humans on the front line, isn't an experiment, it's a preview. The strikes on Russia's Voronezh radars will be studied for decades. Not because they cause catastrophic damage, Russia's nuclear command and control remains functional. Not because they fundamentally alter the strategic balance. NATO and Russia still possess enough nuclear weapons to end civilization. Because they demonstrated that in the age of drones, no target is truly unreachable, no border is truly secure, no radar station, no matter how critical to national defense, is beyond the reach of a determined adversary with the right technology. There's one more uncomfortable truth we need to address: the nuclear dimension. When Ukraine struck radars designed to detect incoming ballistic missiles, it stepped into dangerous territory. These aren't just military assets, they're part of the machinery that prevents nuclear war. Russia's doctrine assumes it will see a nuclear strike coming in time to launch a counterstrike. It's called launch on warning. If those warning systems are degraded, if Russian leadership believes they might not see an attack until it's too late, it creates pressure to launch preemptively in a crisis. Some analysts argue Ukraine's strikes on early warning radars were reckless, that they risked miscalculation in a nuclear-armed conflict. Others argue the radars weren't being used to fight Ukraine's war, and that Russia's nuclear posturing is just that, posturing. The truth is probably somewhere in between. And it highlights the paradox of modern warfare. The tools that give small nations the ability to strike back also carry the risk of unintended escalation. So where does this story end? The war in Ukraine continues. As of January 2026, the front lines remain largely static, but the drone war shows no signs of slowing down. Ukraine is now capable of producing 4 million drones annually, according to President Zelensky. Russia is racing to match that output. Meanwhile, militaries around the world are scrambling to adapt. The United States is fast-tracking autonomous drone programs. China is developing counter-drone technologies. NATO is rewriting its air defense doctrine. And Ukraine continues to push the envelope. Reports suggest Ukrainian intelligence is developing even longer-range systems potentially capable of reaching targets 500 kilometers away. If true, that would put Moscow itself within range. And here's what keeps defense analysts up at night. Ukraine isn't the only country watching this war and learning these lessons. Taiwan is studying Ukrainian drone tactics to prepare for a potential Chinese invasion. Israel is integrating FPV drones into its operations against Hezbollah, and countless non-state actors from insurgent groups to transnational criminal organizations are realizing that drones offer a way to project power without needing tanks, jets, or warships. The barrier to entry for advanced warfare just dropped dramatically. In May 2024, a Ukrainian drone flew 100 kilometers into Russia and struck a radar station designed to prevent nuclear war. It was a technological marvel, a strategic gamble, and a glimpse into the future of conflict. Because the next war, whether it's in the Taiwan Strait, the Baltic Sea, or the Middle East, won't be fought the way Ukraine and Russia started fighting in 2022. It will be fought with swarms, with artificial intelligence, with drones that can think, adapt, and kill without human intervention. And the countries that master these technologies first will write the rules of 21st century warfare. Ukraine didn't ask for this war, but in fighting it, they've shown the world something both inspiring and terrifying: that a nation fighting for its survival can innovate faster than a superpower preparing for conquest, that technology is no longer the exclusive domain of the wealthy and powerful, and that, in the age of drones, distance is no longer a defense. The question now is, what will the rest of the world do with these lessons?